sort of there was this threat of new tariffs, and we didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know if, again, it was just a negotiating tactic or real. Well, we don't have inroads to talk to people that are putting these policies in place to know what they're thinking. What you read is that their desire is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. I can support that. I think it's a noble cause. I would love to manufacture my product in the U.S. We have tried. We've talked to 12 different manufacturers, plastic injection molded factories. 11 out of the 12 told us it's impossible with the machinery that they have. The 12th told us they could do it. We would need to invest in new machinery for them, and it would cost more than double kind of the raw costs of that. And that's not even factoring in the labor costs, because they don't do the net. They don't do all the other stuff. They can do the one piece. Where in China, you found the plastic guy, and they find all the other, and they're all within a region, and they all source it together, and they all pack it out together. It's a level of complexity and impossibility in the U.S. We would go out of business for sure.
Welcome to Utah Stories. So today on the program, we have a guest on from a local business that's going to explain how the tariffs are impacting his business. And the tariffs are an interesting mechanism. They're an interesting lever that we haven't seen a president use in a very long time. I guess Trump used them to an extent in his first presidency, but it's not something that we've ever had nearly this extensive. And I haven't heard much conversation about the pros and the cons. And so very happy to welcome Scott Brown on the program. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So you own a company called Paddle Smash. Can you just explain that company and what you do with that?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick and dirty history of Paddle Smash. I have spent nearly my entire career making toys and games. I co-founded a toy and game store in downtown Chicago in 2008 and grew that over the course of 10 years to have 40 stores across the U.S. And in the process of doing that, got a decent radar of what is trending and what is hot. And one of the things I did while operating those stores is I helped launch a popular outdoor game, not at that time popular, but became popular, called Spike Ball. And most people have now seen Spike Ball out of the beach. It's like a net down near the ground, like a little trampoline, and you're hitting the ball with your open palm. And I watched that thing explode over the last 10 years, just in growth. Got excited by that. And then the other thing that happened to me is that I got really into pickleball. Me and nearly every other person in the U.S. in particular got into pickleball over the last few years. I started playing nearly every day. And I thought, well, what do I want to do next? I want to do something that's pickleball related.
So just pause you for a sec. What was the name of your stores?
It was called Marbles the Brain Store.
Marbles the Brain Store.
Yeah, so educational toys
Wow.
and games. And it was acquired by a big Canadian company where I worked for 3 years after the acquisition.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so you helped launch the Spike Ball, or that was...
I was the first retailer to carry Spike Ball. They started
Okay.
in Chicago. It's where I started my stores, and we got to know each other, and we carried his product in our stores and watched that thing explode.
So how did Paddle Smash
Yeah.
originate? How did that...
Yeah, so people are always approaching me with their ideas around games, and most of the time, honestly, their ideas are not great. They want to know, is this good? Is it worth pursuing? And most of the time, the answer is probably not. But every once in a while, there's a gem out there, and I was introduced to another local inventor. His name's Joe Bingham. He lives in Pleasant View, Utah, and he is, by day, an industrial engineer. And by night, he is an inventor and just kind of a tinkerer. He loves building things in his garage. His kids got really into Spike Ball, and it just got to be where Joe could not play with his kids. They would play, and they would just dominate him because it required a level of physicality he couldn't muster. And then they got into pickleball. Nearest courts for them were 20 minutes away, and they were always packed. And so they'd drive over there. They'd wait for hours to play. And he just thought, well, I can't afford a pickleball court in my backyard, but can I bring a little bit of the flavor of pickleball to my backyard using a little bit of the construct of Spike Ball? And he mocked up a sample with stuff he had in his garage, and they played it. And almost immediately, they were like, we're onto something. Like, Joe, 45-year-old grown man, can play this with my kids and kind of hold my own. It sort of just got bounced around within family parties for the next couple of years. And that's when I met Joe. I played it with Joe, and I said, like, this is real, Joe. You've got something here. Let me take it. I'm going to license it from you, and we're going to see if there's something real by putting it out in front of the broader marketplace. And so that's the origin story around it. Over the last 2 years, we've been growing that business.
That's cool. And so you've had pretty awesome growth with Paddle Smash.
Pretty awesome growth. You know, the pickleball trend is very real. It's the fastest growing sport in North America, and anybody that loves pickleball is looking for other ways to play pickleball. And one thing you can't do is play pickleball at the beach. You can't play pickleball at the tailgate. And our game is, in a sense, it's a portable pickleball. Gives you a little bit of flavor of pickleball. Also, it gives you a taste of pickleball in your backyard because most people can't put a court in their backyard.
Yeah, so let's switch to the tariffs now. So you obviously, most manufacturing is not done in the United States because our labor costs are simply too expensive. And so tell us how the Trump tariffs have impacted your business.
Yeah, they impacted us in the first administration. He put a 12% tariff on many of the toys and games being brought in. So it impacted us then. The hope was always that it was short term and a negotiating tactic. It didn't turn out to be, and is still in place. And then sort of there was this threat of new tariffs, and we didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know if, again, it was just a negotiating tactic or real. Well, he's not only put in an additional 10%, but another 10% on top of that. So we're talking a 32% tariff for our goods being brought in. So how does it impact us? You know, we're caught in this no man's land. We can't now afford to manufacture it in China without passing on the costs of that increase onto the American consumer. Because of the size of our small business, we don't have the volumes, the economies of scale yet to be able to have low price. And so we're already a high-priced item. And what we've been working towards for the last couple of years is bringing that price down so that it's more palatable and more accessible to the broad consumer base. And you know, this makes it so we have to raise the prices. We have to, otherwise we cannot stay in business. So it's either keep making in China, raise the prices. It's find another country to make it in that's not China or the U.S. That's tricky too. And I'll say, like, the biggest thing that makes that thing tricky, well, it's not a quick change. You've got to recreate your whole tooling. You've got to find manufacturers that have that capability. It's not easy. The other thing that's sort of an interesting, like, tidbit that I didn't know is that as we've explored manufacturing in other countries, for example, Vietnam, almost all of the factories are owned by Chinese.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's just, you just sort of shifting.
But the tariff doesn't affect Vietnam.
It does not affect Vietnam right now.
Interesting.
Right now, it doesn't. But what could happen is that we move it all over there. Everyone else does the same thing, and then, you know, there's this new threat, and they get the tariff as well. So then I'd just say the third is manufacture in the U.S. And for us, that's, I'd say, an impossibility. Yeah, for a variety of reasons, but the biggest is just that there are no manufacturers that have the capabilities, A, and B, the cost would be just too high. The cost is more than double what we pay overseas.
So when you break down the costs, obviously you got material costs and labor costs. What out of those two, would both of those go up if you, I mean, obviously labor costs would go up, but material costs as well? Can we not get the raw materials as cheap as China can?
Correct, we can't. We don't have the volumes. These same factories are ordering thousands and thousands of tons of those same plastic materials for all the manufacturing they're doing.
Yeah, when it comes to things like that, I understand why it's greatly beneficial to manufacture automobiles in the United States. That's a more skilled level of manufacturing. It's a product that you don't then have to ship overseas, and we want to give those kind of jobs to the blue collar workers and the workforce of the United States if people will take those jobs, and I think they will take auto manufacturing. But if you're talking about working in a plastic factory, and you're like dealing with injectable plastics, I'd assume, into molds, I know there's a company that does that it has a very unique niche in that market called Lifetime Products. You probably know them too.
Know them well. We've gotten a quote from them. And
have you?
4 times what we pay in China.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'd have to charge, for our product, we'd have to charge $800 if we were to manufacture at Lifetime.
That's crazy.
No one's going to buy our product for $800.
Yeah, and that's typical that you find you kind of subcontract the manufacturing off to somebody who's doing something already similar in China, and that's just the place to build plastic stuff.
It is.
And I don't know that. So the American consumer obviously loses when they buy the product, but the American taxpayer might get a win from the tariff that's placed on the product. Do you see that one is that the tax on the product somehow could outweigh as a benefit the loss of the higher price of the product at the store?
We don't necessarily know. This has been experimented with in the past, but not in the recent past, really. Where I believe it will impact is the ability for small businesses like mine to survive. You talk about a company like Apple. Apple has cash reserves. They're able to weather these storms. They're able to absorb the increase in costs and keep their product priced at similar levels. We're not. We're not that nimble. We do not have the cash reserves. It would push us out of business if it persists. And that's what I fear, is that we've got thousands of small businesses that have manufactured overseas, and we get pushed into no man's land. We can't bring it to the U.S. because no one will pay. Your example of autos is interesting because I do think that there's margin in that. In high-priced items, there's sort of this price fluctuation that people are used to. For goods like toys and games, we have in our head how much you pay for those things, and it's barely shifted over the last 30 years. You know, like you pay $20 for a board game, you pay $50 for. We have in our head what it is, and it's barely shifted. We don't have that price elasticity around our product.
Yeah, and so the total tariff you said is 30%.
32%.
32%, and that tariff is I guess they assume that the tariff on every product is going to be a level consistent enough to be adding a certain amount to the coffers. They're not really calculating that the cost of that tariff on the consumer, or how much less of that product will be bought by consumers because of the tariff.
I don't think they are. I don't know. We don't have inroads to talk to people that are putting these policies in place to know what they're thinking. What you read is that their desire is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. I can support that. I think it's a noble cause. I would love to manufacture my product in the U.S. We have tried. We've talked to 12 different manufacturers, plastic injection molded factories. 11 out of the 12 told us it's impossible with the machinery that they have. The 12th told us they could do it. We would need to invest in new machinery for them, and it would cost more than double kind of the raw costs of that. And that's not even factoring in the labor costs, because they don't do the net. They don't do all the other stuff. They can do the one piece. Where in China, you found the plastic guy, and they find all the other, and they're all within a region, and they all source it together, and they all pack it out together. It's a level of complexity and impossibility in the U.S. We would go out of business for sure.
What about Mexico? Can you make
there's tariffs in Mexico, or it's kind of been Mexico, on again, Canada. Off again. It's possible. They do not have the skill set yet, and they do not have the machinery yet to do what we do. I've made product in Mexico. It is always a step down in quality. It's always an extra 6 months of back and forth trying to get it to the right spot. They can get there. What China has is decades of experience. And I'm telling you, it is night and day difference trying to work with a Chinese engineer versus a Mexican engineer versus a U.S. engineer. We have skill sets here for sure, no doubt about it. But you go to China and you say, I have an idea for something. Here's a drawing on the back of my napkin of it. Literally the next day, they'll have a small-scale mock-up of that product for you. It's a level of skill and a level of speed that we don't have here.
Yeah. So when you look at Trump's big picture, which is China's ripping us off, and we've been getting ripped off from them for years, and we put up with it, and we have to bring manufacturing back here no matter what it takes, and it's going to be, I guess he's saying it's going to be painful in the beginning. Do you agree with that big picture?
The China's ripping us off, like maybe I can understand some of that perspective. I think that there's probably an imbalance. I would argue that we as a country haven't suffered greatly from that imbalance, that we as a whole, as a country, do quite well relative to the rest of the world. So is that threat or is that imbalance really hurting us? In some ways it is.
Yeah, it's a trade deficit, and we can't overcome that trade deficit as much as we try because we love our cheap crap.
Yeah.
We just love going to Walmart and wherever, at Amazon, wherever you care, and we love paying less for what we want.
Absolutely. We'd have to collectively hold hands and say we're all willing to pay significantly more for product. And I guess theoretically it's you will now experience tax savings because of the tariffs that would give you more cash in your pocket to spend more. I don't see it. I don't see us being able to make that shift quickly enough to not really impact lots and lots of businesses.
Yeah, and I mentioned in the previous episode about economics, and people should study it because it's important. But the way I look at it is it's a transition from being a manufacturing economy to a services-based economy, and you're way better off being in a services-based economy because then it's more about being professionals rather than laborers, getting more people out of the blue-collar professions and into white-collar, and that's kind of where we are, and why we have such a wealthy country.
It really is. There's a great documentary that I just watched last week called American Factory, which is set in Ohio. It's a automobile factory that went out of business and then was purchased by a Chinese billionaire to manufacture auto glass. And the whole premise of the documentary is, can American workers make things like the Chinese workers? And I'd say like the overall answer is not really. And I actually am proud of American workers for that in many ways, because we just are not willing to do the tedium of that sort of monotonous day-to-day over and over and over task. And I've been to many Chinese factories. I've spent months there. I've watched the level of tedium in there, in these factories, just these assembly lines over and over and over again. It's almost in their cultural DNA at this point that we don't have.
One last question. AI and robotics, can that get to a point in the near future where that could be the new manufacturing plant and just replace these workers with robots to manufacture a product like you're talking about?
It's possible. I don't think it's soon. I think it's possible, certainly. If you saw my product, you would see that there's a net that extends up from this plastic base. Well, the plastic part machines can do for sure, but the level of sort of coordination required to just sew this net, I don't know. I think it's possible, but not now, and not anytime soon.
Maybe 5 years, 10 years.
Maybe. We won't be around in 5 years if we're required to wait.
Well, good luck to you, Scott. I hope people listen to this, watch this. I hope this informs our policymakers, because it's a very important thing that the local businesses who are trying to get products out there can stay in business, and I appreciate you coming on. Did we have any questions?
No, but I have a question.
Yeah.
So what's your strategy with this uncertainty? And do you think this is still a part of negotiation tactic?
I hope so. And I would say the toy industry as a whole, I think, is banking on it being just a negotiating tactic, because all of them are delaying their shipments. They're all waiting and hoping. And what will happen is, if it doesn't switch, we are going to run out of product this fourth quarter. People will not be able to find the toys and games they're used to finding. For us, we cannot bear that risk. The best part of our year is in the spring and summer. It's an outdoor game.
Right.
And so where most of the toy industry does the bulk of their business in the fourth quarter, they've got time to wait a little bit before they have to pull the trigger. We don't, and we have to pull the trigger. We are having to just bear the burden of the tariff right now. And then the longer term strategy is to move some of our manufacturing to a country like Vietnam that is not impacted by the tariff currently.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Scott. You'll have to keep us posted on what happens. I think it's an ongoing saga. It's never boring with the Trump administration. It seems like every day there's a new drama, new big thing happening, and let's hope this is a tactic that eventually he just decides to let go, or at least understand the nuance of different industries and change the tariff system based on the industries that people are in.
Yeah. Regardless of how I feel about him, I'm rooting for us as a country. I hope we do well, and I hope that what he's doing helps us to do well. So I'm rooting for us.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. This has been a Utah Stories production. If you don't know Utah Stories magazine, Our beer issue was supposed to come out today. It's our big Moab Adventure Guide beer issue. It's stuck in Fruta because of the snowstorm, but it will come out tomorrow, and it's going to hit the stands, and all of our subscribers will get it. It really disappears quickly in all the locations. This is our fastest moving issue we produce all year because it has a giant Moab Adventure Guide. And we worked with the Travel Council, and it's how you vacation and how you love Moab. If you are into rock crawling, if you're into rock climbing, if you are into skydiving, if you are into river rafting, if you're into base jumping, canyoneering, trail running, it's like the Moab you love, the Moab for everyone is in this guide. I wish I could hold it up and show it to you. It's super exciting because it's the biggest, most awesome Moab issue we've produced since before COVID. So subscribe today and we will send it to you. But you have to subscribe like right now. And we will send you this Moab Adventure Guide craft beer issue. And you'll love it. It's $3 a month to subscribe to Utah Stories. Or if you pay $8 a month, you get both Faces of Utah, which is entrepreneur success stories all over Utah, the best of the best. Sounds like you probably need to be in here.
I would like to be.
And Utah Stories monthly magazine. We will send you these if you subscribe just for $8 a month, and you get behind our paywall and get all our special investigative journalism as well. So utahstories.com, go out, check it out, and we will see